who's muted. Okay, we'll get back to you. Okay, we have three, did I miss anybody? We have three main topics on the agenda. A briefing on the status of all the engagement activities to date and those that are coming up. We're going to bring everyone up to date on the data collection. Then we're going to pivot to a framework. Elizabeth and Molly and others have put together a preliminary framework for the plan, which is kind of like a foundation we build upon, or you can call it the skeleton of the plan we're going to start adding meat to. So it's really pivoting, based upon all the data we've collected, all the engagement activities up to date. We're going to start talking about the plan itself, which is going to be exciting. I think we want to spend a bulk of our time on the framework. So hopefully everyone can stay with us to 6:30. So why don't we jump into engagement status? I don't know if either Elizabeth or Molly want to start with that.
Okay. So this is just the dashboard that we have currently with what activities are going on or what's coming up. I know that TDC, we've been doing a lot of these phone interviews with multiple stakeholders, and actually I know that some of you, that's why you were reached out, if you haven't been to these meetings before, you were trying to involve people after we talk with them. And that not so much as like resident stakeholders, but other players like the land bank, like with LISC, with the churches in the neighborhood, with the school principals, and we're moving along with that, and we should be done with that pretty soon. Virtual focus groups are slowly coming together with an East Toledo stakeholders group that's scheduled for March 30th, and that's, or 31st, and that's coordinated with Jody. And there's also an East Toledo residents focus group coming up either on the 30th or 31st. I know that Teresa and I have been talking about how to get some teachers together for a school focus group, hopefully in April. And then later on, we're still looking to coordinate kind of the business owners together. And so that might be an effort between people like Teresa Gaddis and between Dan. We also have mailbox surveys coming up that we'll talk about. Global Youth Service Day is April 24th. I don't know if Jody has anything to add on that.
We're working on the flyer, and we will be flyering the neighborhood probably 2 weeks before that event, just to let the neighbors know that we'll be out in the neighborhood. So Sky's going to work on that for us.
Awesome. I know we've also talked about doing a bicycle event or slow roll. I don't know if Nancy wants to speak to that.
Yeah, actually, I reached out to Jenny Hansen, who works with the YMCA, and she's the Safe Routes to School coordinator, and she's very interested in working with us on this. I also emailed Todd Deem and Bike Toledo and found out that TMACOG is not holding any cycling events in May. And so I've also reached out to a group called Bike Rides Matter, which has gotten quite a presence on Facebook. And they actually planned, the gentleman who runs it, Keith Cook, I believe his name is, he has bike rides set for Saturdays and Sundays. One is called a glow roll, in which you outfit your bike in all kinds of fun lights and things like that. And you slowly, do a loop around a neighborhood. They're generally about an hour long, so probably covering about 10 miles. And he also has the jazz roll on Sunday afternoons, but I'm going to see if, he did mention that he wants to look at different neighborhoods. So I'm going to try to coordinate with him for looking at mid-April possibly at right after Easter break on either a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon. And so that's percolating along.
Would this be a ride through through the Garfield neighborhood?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, what I was hoping, Teresa and Tracy, if you had any ideas as far as teachers, elementary school teachers that I could reach out to, and just getting a kind of like a little survey, a little fun survey monkey that I could provide to geography teachers or humanities teachers, just to find out what your favorite spots as far as the students go, and develop a route based on that kind of feedback.
Sounds good. Thanks, Nancy.
No problem.
Also for April, we have also reached out to Todd Deem. We've been waiting, I know Paul talked with him for a stakeholder interview, and then we've been waiting for Todd to pick a date to meet with the high school group called SMARTS, which I think is like students making achievements right this moment or something like that. Like having a discussion with that student group can lead into maybe some sort of like essay competition or something that can help us engage more with TPS, including with what can happen with this, with any biking events. I added recycling day to our calendar. I know that's June 6th, and there's a location at Waite, and so we might find a way to plug into that. TDC is also joining a finance council meeting with the Epiphany of the Lord Parish. I think that's tied in the Sacred Heart.
Jared Consulting and Magic.
I'm sorry, what was that? Oh, okay. And so that's what we have going on for April. Is Ryan on this call yet?
Not yet.
Okay. He had some other announcement, but we will let him maybe give that at the end. So unless there are any questions on this, we're gonna move forward.
Molly, do you need any contacts from members of the planning team for focus group names or anything else?
I know that we have a good start on that business list, and I know that Teresa mentioned that they were working on fleshing that out a little more, and Teresa's also been really helpful with getting our school contacts. And we already have our list set for the resident group, and we have our list set for the East Lear stakeholders group. So I think for now, we have.
Hey, Danny, could you provide any additional names for the business group?
Martin, I have all the businesses listed along the business route. We're just verifying the
Okay,
people. I have my aide Erin working on it, so I
Okay.
should have.
sounds good.
Jared Consulting.
And Jody was really helpful with getting a list too of who she had. So
I just saw that Ryan joined. I'm gonna let him talk about, if he's ready to talk about what he had. He's connecting to audio. Yeah. Ryan. Where'd he go?
Okay, I think I'm. Sorry about
Yes.
that. Hi, everyone.
You came just in time to.
Yeah, sorry I'm late. I was, for some reason, thinking we were at 5:30, and then I realized it was 5:15, and I was 15 minutes late, so I apologize. How can I help you, Molly?
Oh no, you had an announcement, and so like you popped in right in time to actually say whatever it was that you
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So I'll just start. We reallocated the funds. We finally got all of this figured out literally just this week, and so the funds we were originally going to use here for our Young Artists at Work program in East Toledo to work on a storefront and hire some youth from the neighborhood got canceled because of COVID. We were able to get those funds extended and reallocate them. What we are intending to do is to paint a significant mural in the neighborhood that's themed on the flora and fauna themes that have dictated some of the other work that's happened kind of down by the Design Collective in the tunnels and on Water Street. I also have an opportunity to offer a couple paid contract positions specifically for young people and residents in the neighborhood. I can go into those details later, but in the short term, I was really hoping to get from this group, and I'll mention this at the LISC stakeholder meeting again tomorrow, but I was hoping to get from this group some recommendations for sites for a mural. This ideally would be along Main Street, is probably would be my preference to keep it connected to the Garfield Planning Initiative and some of the enthusiasm around the Metro Park and that kind of thing. But so it doesn't, we can either talk about it now, or if folks just want to throw ideas in the chat as they have them, I can collect them there, or you can shoot me an email. But really just, if you know of a specific business owner that would be excited about it, or there's just a wall that you think could use some love, those would be all great things. So we have to use these funds by June 30th. So we're on a little bit of an expedited timeline to get the site selected and then move through all the stuff on our end that it takes to get that done. So.
I have a quick question for you,
Yeah.
Ryan. Is it possible to, I'm thinking in terms of kind of killing two birds with one stone as far as the safety concerns, pedestrians along, oh my gosh, why am I spacing the name of the street that runs by the Metro Parks? Anyway, Front Street, thank you. Anyway, is it possible to do any murals on the street where you are in coordination with where the Metro Parks has identified as crossways, on a scale, because it does, those visual cues do slow things down, and it may be an inexpensive way to handle it. Also, well, it's a natural way to feed people into the Glass City Parks across the street from the neighborhood, and also may get, kind of just naturally put a drag on traffic in the sense that people won't be just racing through to get through and more enjoy the ride. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I will say the barriers to that, the state of Ohio is not particularly forward thinking when it comes to putting paint on anything, especially streets and crosswalks. So there's a lot of state regulations depending on if it's a state route, and I don't know for Front Street if it's a state route or
county.
if it's county. So
right.
There's just a lot of hurdles there. And then I do know that Front Street is planned for some renovations, and that there's so we wouldn't want to do that until after those things were complete.
Right.
So I just don't think it wouldn't match up specifically for this opportunity, but I agree. I would like to see all of the crosswalks in the city painted. It's proven to be a significant challenge, both with local and state government at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I should say we're meeting, there's a national call for the Bloomberg Asphalt Art Fund, which is a national fund specifically for painting right-of-ways. We are meeting with the city next week to discuss that opportunity, so I can put this on the list for consideration for that. That application ultimately has to be driven by the city. But yeah, I love it, and I totally agree. I also can't tell you that you can't take a bucket of paint out there and just do it.
Tactical urbanism always works. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Anything else on engagement, past or present?
Well, so that's all future. What was that?
Or
I
future?
just said thanks to Dan and Sean for throwing some things in the chat.
Okay, so that was present and future. We do, or Marty, just to add to what you asked, we do want to start looking at, we did want to showcase what TDC has done this far, as looking at what's been accomplished.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just speak a little bit on this. I'm going to talk about engagement thus far in the plan, which has primarily been conducted both in person and over social media. So a few of our digital strategies from the beginning of the plan have included both an Instagram account and a website. And if you haven't been able to visit the website, I encourage you to check it out. The website also has a link to a resident and stakeholder survey via Google Forms. So if you haven't filled that out, also please feel free to do so. And that website URL is at the bottom of the screen. It's garfieldguides.wixsite.com. And our handle on Instagram is at Garfield Guides, and we've been creating content to push out to the community. One collection of posts we've created is the Did You Know series, which is in the top left, and it highlights significant neighborhood history. We've done one on the Weber Block building, the 1929 widening of Main Street, and Waite High School. And then another set of posts that we've created are content themed weeks, which highlight steps in the community planning process. Those are the maps you see on the right. From our data mapping, we also have a post for resident engagement and design. And the TDC is partnering with Midstory for this plan and will be showcasing some of their work on the Garfield Guides Instagram. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Ruth from Midstory, who's going to talk more about some of the media that Midstory is creating.
Great.
Thank you,
It
Anthony.
says that I cannot start screen share. Do you mind pausing and or stopping? Great. All right. So can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
What do you see? Because I'm not sure. You
Mini
see?
doc series in production.
Perfect. Okay. Let me enlarge this guy over here. Okay, so Midstory, we're an educational media nonprofit in the area. We've been invited on to do some educational media, including a mini doc series that features specific local stakeholders, residents, and that part is very much still ongoing. We were able to interview 5 people thus far: Jody Gross, Beth Piper, Elizabeth Ellis, Bob Seifing, Larry Michaels. And many of these people, many of them are actually here. And this is really to kind of lay out the background of the plan to come. I believe that as the plan gets developed in the next few months and as the focus groups happen, I think it warrants an update in terms of an update on these videos, which are still in production right now. However, based on what we've observed with Garfield engagement and the need for more kind of catchy, shorter posts on our social media, and also in the line of what Anthony was just sharing, we were able to pull some of these media that we've collected into what we call audio posters. And these are really content to promote planning and engagement, and they could potentially be boosted to focus on specific age groups, gender, even occupation and location. And so that's something that we would be able to do if we were to release on Facebook and Instagram, and that I think would take the engagement to the next level, because we have had a lot of barriers in meeting in person. And so let me double check one other thing. And so I think something that, especially in collaboration in the last few weeks with TDC, we talked about, having these graphic posts that are audio based as well. And they would be short, less than 2 minutes long. And each one of them would be specifically asking a engagement question to which we can link a specific survey to. And it would also give us information, I think, that we've been trying to find out from our stakeholders interviews so far. And so, for instance, let me know if you guys can hear this. Can you guys hear that?
No, we're not hearing
No. Okay, give me 1 second.
Just a little.
Okay, just a little.
I think this is a time that a lot of people
Okay.
are
So
realizing the power.
I think it's soft for a reason because I plan on talking over it. So I'm talking over it now. So anyway, these would then be released. These are mock-ups on Instagram in addition to the content that Anthony was showing. This is what it would look like on the current Garfield Guides website, or sorry, Instagram site. And also on Facebook, this is how it would appear. And so anyway, the information has already—
I grew up on Licking Street.
Preview. So this is basically, I want to take the next 5 minutes to run these through with you and hopefully be an encouragement to what we've done so far. And I think exciting as we move forward, what were some of the insights from the stakeholders that are sitting, some of whom are sitting around the table today.
I grew up on Licking Street, and I have wonderful parents. Growing up, my dad was actually a police officer and my mom was a school assistant teacher. I just loved living here, and there was so much to do, and that's why I stayed. And then I raised my kids, and now I'm starting to think, wow, there's really not much here, so my goal now is to try to get this area back to how it was, or for the next generation. But we need everybody's input. Everybody has different ideas, and we need everybody to get involved in one way or another. If it's not physically, maybe it's something you could do with phone calls and handing out flyers. We just need more people to get out there and then spread the word. Whether it's on Facebook or just talking to each other. I just feel like there's tremendous hope for East Toledo.
Could you guys hear that okay?
Yeah. Yes. Very well.
Great. So I'll move on.
But you have to make plans. If you don't make plans, you will never accomplish anything. And I think that the Garfield plan is a great example, because although that neighborhood is in great shape, there's good things happening, you need to be able to continue to move forward. And that means, yes, the park was the catalyst and then this economic development, but what can we do in the neighborhood? What could you do? The old corner store that was torn down and now it's an empty lot. How can that be reinvented so that the neighborhood flourishes from that? I think that that's the way that you adjust, and that's why plans are important.
Very nice, Jody.
I think this is a time.
Steel Street, Carbon, Licking, those kind of streets associated with industry. And of course, that was the jobs. And that's what brought all these people to America and Toledo. The East Side was truly a melting pot. I mentioned the Bulgarians and the Hungarians, and all over people came to America. They could own their own land. They could find a good job that paid a living wage, and to make life better for their children. And they just came. Toledo in 1860 had a population of 13,000. By 1900, it was 131,000, 10 times multiple.
Time that a lot of people are realizing. I think this is a time that a lot of people are realizing the power in community organizations and the power of collectively coming together with a common voice of this is what we want to see done. And so when we talk about planning, obviously that's the goal, right? Is to ultimately come to a group consensus. This is the vision for the neighborhood. The Toledo Design Collective or other organizations involved, we're not trying to impose our own vision, that it's really about residents and existing and future residents, and then also stakeholders' visions for what the neighborhood is.
I grew up in West Toledo and always admired East Toledo, especially Wade High School. They had this loyalty of the East Toledo people that was just incredible. Nobody ever lost track of where their roots were in Toledo that grew up on the East Side, and it's still kind of that way. You know, it was a strong, very, very strong neighborhood back when I was in high school. I remember playing football and playing over at Waite Stadium. So it was a wonderful neighborhood. There were car dealers on Main Street. There were, drugstores. Or J.C. Penney was there. Woolworths was there. It was pretty remarkable.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Very nice.
If you guys have any questions or comments, I think it would be great to continue these in the next process if these do well. And perhaps more resident voices could be featured as well.
I just want to say, I think all 5 were very compelling and all 5 from very different perspectives, which is good. Nice work, Ruth.
Oh, it looked like Kim, you had a question.
Yeah, I think that the responses to the interviews were great. They were reflective of different perspectives. My concern, though, is that the interviews are not racially reflective of the demographic of East Toledo. And so if we're trying to engage voices in East Toledo, I think it does need to be reflective racially of the composition, and just showing those interviews that are, stories that deserve to be shared. If they're the only stories that are shared, I think the message about this planning process may be that others that are reflective of other racial demographics may not have been included or welcome, and I don't think that that is the intent. And so it might be important to figure out how you can connect with some of those voices so that you can stage the flow publicly of those interviews so that it really does reflect the intent.
And to speak to that, I totally agree. And I think from day one, we've been trying to engage those particular resident voices. And I actually would still appreciate if we have more contacts toward that end. I believe I have a few in my deposits, in my email accounts, but I think if you guys within this table, around this table, would have some suggestions, that would be wonderful.
Ruth, did I send you the name of Garland Parker?
Yes, yes.
Wait.
Yes, and I plan to reach out to him, but in the process, we have been processing the first 5 interviews.
Sure.
And I just want to also preface that the interviews that Midstory was commissioned to do is a little bit different from the stakeholder interviews that have been done by other people around the table, because those have been phone interviews. And these actually have a video component to them, which makes them a little bit more laborious to do. And so it does take a little bit more planning before, during, and after. And so, yes, if any voices that you've talked to on the phone think would be great, please send them my way. We can set up a video interview.
Good. Thanks, Ruth. Anything else on engagement? Anything else you have, Ruth?
Marty, can I just interject for a second? I think as we work through the neighborhood and we have these stakeholder conversations, I'm sure that we can identify a more representative of the neighborhood in East Toledo as a whole. But I think we have to really look at the Garfield neighborhood. If we're reaching out to the Garfield neighborhood, what does that make up as well? So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. Obviously, diversity, what represents East Toledo is very important, but I think we need to look at the neighborhood specifically for those outreaches as well.
Okay, thanks, Jody.
Yep.
Anything else? Okay. Before we move to the new topic on the framework, we have a few new people that have joined the call since introductions. Kim, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Kim Kucher. Kim Kucher with List Toledo.
Anybody else jump in since we did introductions? Okay, thought there were more. Are we ready to move on to the framework?
No.
No? Oh, go ahead.
We're still, we're
Go ahead.
Well, no, I just want to say that like this meeting is kind of a hybrid of, you know, we have our agenda items as the CBT, but obviously like we're trying to update all the completed work. So there's still, we do want to kind of run through, I think Anthony has a couple more things on engagement. We did want to run through what we've completed with data, and then like we do have dedicated time for framework.
Yeah, sorry.
You're good. It's just,
go ahead.
This meeting's just different than
what
we've done before. And so if I can, Anthony, if you want to.
Yes. So as I mentioned before, next week is the Garfield Guides Engagement Week. We're going to be posting about resident perspectives on strengths, challenges, and opportunities in the neighborhood. On the next slide, we've identified enhance individual and collective well-being, and these can include physical and non-physical elements. And the words you see in the bottom right corner in the shape of the Garfield neighborhood are drawn from resident survey responses we've collected, and the size of the words on the map denote how frequently those strengths were mentioned in the surveys. The next word cloud shows neighborhood challenges which can arise in any part of a neighborhood or aspect of community life, negatively impacting a neighborhood in many ways. And lastly, opportunities are outlets that provide ways to improve the neighborhood well-being, and opportunities within Garfield include location, people, and different programs. And I also want to quickly recap some of the safe in-person engagement opportunities we've been able to capitalize on for the plan. Pictured left is TDC board member Sean Stewart canvassing for the Glass City Metro Parks event we had last month. The top right picture shows a preliminary promotional flyer for the plan that volunteers canvassed with back in the fall. And then in the bottom right corner is TDC intern Elizabeth Moore surveying properties for a structure grading data collection. And the Glass City Metro Park sledding event was back in February, and it was definitely a success. We engaged with well over 50 residents and received 11 new survey responses from residents and stakeholders alike. There were also several different Toledo groups present, and attendees were able to learn more about the plan and other organizations. And so far, we've been trying to leave everyone we've engaged with a participation toolkit pamphlet, which maps out different types of actions that residents can do depending on how much time they have. Actions can range from checking out our social media pages to volunteering or even setting up a phone interview. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth and Molly, and they're going to go and slide through some of the data collection.
Thanks, Anthony.
Yep. So, yeah, as Marty mentioned, like we want the bulk of the conversation at the end of this to be around the framework. But I think before we get into the framework, we want to just explain, you know, where some of those ideas have come from, which is all the data collection we've done this far, and we're still, you know, picking up more information as we go. But we do have census data from both the 2010 and 2018. The census and the ACS surveys. We have some street analysis maps of the Garfield area. We have components of quality of life from tree canopy and walkability. And there's a lot of parcel data to quickly kind of go over from that structure survey that we got to pilot kind of as a first run for the land bank, who's going to do a citywide survey in 2021. And just to recap for anybody that's new, this might be out of order, but just so everyone is aware, this is what we mean when we talk about Garfield and the Garfield boundaries. It is to capture all of the Main and Star Business District. It does go out to Euclid down here, and it's bounded by I-280 and to the north. And we've listed some of the key community anchors, such as the schools, the new Marina Lost development, the Glass City Metro Park, key places on Main Street like the food market and the Weber building. This is just that shown in kind of an axon format with some of these arrows denoting the busier streets. And so,
sure.
Elizabeth.
So when we talk about Garfield, we're really talking about the population is around just under 1,500 people within that boundary that Molly showed. It's a pretty diverse population, again, as we've heard through comments even tonight. And then we also think it's pretty important to note too that since 2010 census data to 2018 census data, the Garfield neighborhood decreased in population about 30%. And then when we talk about, on the next slide, when we talk about income, employment, and household information, really we see that Garfield's median household income is right around $23,000. And this is made up of that 594 households identified in the 2018 census data, and you can kind of see the owner occupancy makeup. And then it's also, I think, important to call out to that Garfield unemployment rate, especially when compared to the city of Toledo's unemployment rate, is higher at 12%.
That's kind of the brief summary of the census data. Some other inventory items that we've been looking at, of course, is just the basic makeup of the streets, the most busiest being in pink, connector streets being in purple, and this not as busy residential being in blue. This also affects how you look at parking patterns, with no parking on any side of the street being in red, one-sided in yellow, and both sided in green. And I think that's something that we've heard a lot of comments on, actually, is the residential street parking and how narrow these streets get, and how that might affect street maintenance and accessibility and pedestrian right-of-ways. We also look at access to transportation. Garfield is very compact and dense. The bus routes, for the most part, the yellow and pink are servicing Waite High School. And they also go out to the Birmingham Library, to my understanding. The blue route showing what goes through East Toledo, and in the planning document we'll show how that correlates to like the all East Toledo bus routes. And then moving from basic site quality to maybe things that affect quality of life, we look at things like the walkability score, which ranges from 45 to 75 in Garfield. The 75, that higher number, higher walk score, is going to be in these anchor areas in the Main and Star Business District. The circles showing what's within a 15-minute walk. And you notice that in the residential area, a lot of services in that Main Street area might be more out of reach, or just, unless you have a bike or if you have a car, might be more inconvenient to get to. And why having nice paths can be important.
And then tree canopy also enhances the quality of life. So when we look at tree canopy, we're really looking at the canopy over the streets, which are indicated on this map in white. So you'll see that actually Garfield, within the residential core, that actually has a pretty nice tree canopy. But then once you move out towards Main and Star Business District, there's less of a tree canopy. And if the next slide really, and again, I think it's one of those things, if you walk Garfield, it's very evident that it does have a very nice tree canopy. And again, just to highlight, the reason why tree canopy affects quality of life is not only because of environmental and then public and social benefits that it has, but there's also economic benefits that are added when you talk about increased tree canopy. And then also parks can increase that quality of life as well. So when we talk about parks, we thought that this map really shows not only parks within Garfield, but really connecting parks more at the East Toledo and more of even a regional scale, and that Garfield is actually very well positioned. There's a lot of parks, whether it's the metro parks or the city parks, that are around, and yes, it's important that the Garfield neighborhood obviously has access to those, but there's also opportunities then to connect to other East Toledo residents and neighborhoods through the parks and enhance that quality of life, not just for Garfield, but also for East Toledo in general and beyond.
Okay. There've been a
And then-
couple. Oh, go ahead, Liz.
Yeah, I think we just want to continue this onto frameworks, so because there's just
Okay.
a couple of things that are heavier. So when we talk about zoning, one thing that is very apparent within Garfield zoning is that there is no single family zoning category within Garfield. It's all within the residential, either duplex or multifamily. There is some mixed commercial and residential. And then also, when we talk about zoning, there are a couple of overlays that happen within Garfield that are important to be cognizant of. So from Front Street to the river, you have the riverfront overlay. You also have the Marina District overlay that also happens on the other side of Front Street. And then on Main Street, we have the urban neighborhood overlay. So then when we look at the land use, again, it's mixed match of land use compared to zoning. So the land use, again, shows that single family land use is the most common within Garfield.
Could I just add one comment? I think one of the issues with that mismatch between land use and zoning is you have single family homes are built and designed for one family, can be easily converted to two families due to the type of zoning. A house that was really designed to accommodate one family is going to have much more intensive use and more parking, and that contributes to some of the street parking issues in the neighborhood. So,
yeah, thanks, Marty.
okay. There were a couple of items on the chat list. One question was, is street traffic volume from actual counts or by type? Yeah, I assume meaning type of street. Do we know the answer to that?
It is by type of street.
By type of street, okay. And the other question was, is the engagement toolkit available on our website? I'm not finding it.
The toolkit was made to be a pamphlet that you can fold, but it's easily transferable to a digital PDF or or it could be presented online.
So the material itself is on the website, but not in
other way around.
format.
The material itself is a physical pamphlet, but we can send that to you.
Okay. Good. Thanks, Molly.
Yep. Moving from, well, I guess we are already in some of this parcel data, but when we talked about that Elizabeth mentioned that census data of like that 50% renter occupied. I think it was 26 or 24% owner occupied, and then you had like another 20 some identified as vacant, which I'm not sure how that stacks up to the 2020 data that will come out. This is a map from the auditors of rental versus owner, which of course, you know, you have to take into consideration that some of this is all business and not residential. But it is interesting to see these parcels seem actually a lot more even maybe than what we heard from the ACS for 2018. And when we look at later in the framework, when we start to look at like home ownership, home improvement programs, maps like these will be really useful.
Okay. And would we assume that one reason for the relatively high vacancy rate is the decreasing population, leaving behind vacant units? And there hasn't been an exceptional amount of demolition. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And if I can. And I also, we've been talking about this since last fall and never really got to tell people how this turned out. But as some of you know, the Land Bank is going to be doing a citywide structure grading survey in 2020 or sometime this year. We got to pilot that process with their app they're testing out, and I know they're still kind of changing up what their grading scale is, so these results might change next year, but we were given a survey to fill out based on, you know, visible like exterior defects in the foundation, if there were anything wrong with the roof or the doors, windows, paint and siding, or fire damage. Obviously something with fire damage might have a higher point deduction than something like you know, peeling paint. But this was interesting to look at from like our first take at it. And we had 57% of the structures in Garfield as grade A, identified as excellent. You know, these parcels considered to be the backbone of the neighborhood, and 22% grade B. 15% fair. These are in the middle. These are still, you know, decent and inhabitable, but we want to keep from slipping into a grade D or F. You know, F is possible loss, is most likely to be demoed. You know, D is getting close, and these percentages are small, but I think as we get further into this plan, we're gonna have to start looking at street by block percentages, because you notice that there might be some concentrations more, you know, in the southeast half of Bain Street, or there might be some areas along Front Street. So even though these percentages seem low, you know that there might be a concentration to look at for rehab programs. And so that's, you know, that's kind of running through all the maps that we have right now.
Yeah.
And
that's very helpful. Thank you, Molly, Liz, and Anthony. So I guess we want to pivot to a preliminary framework, as we talked about briefly at the beginning of the session. There's been a lot of data collection and a lot of engagement, and the engagement is certainly continuing, but we found it necessary to really kind of group together and put together a preliminary framework. And I think Liz and Molly have done a real good job on framing it out. And it's, again, it's like a skeleton we're going to add meat to, but it's to get some initial thinking, are we on the right track in terms of the skeleton of the plan. So turn over to Molly and Liz and Anthony.
yeah, so you know, as Marty mentioned, you know, these are our initial thoughts based on some things that we've heard, based on what we've seen. We've identified, you know, 5 zones, and these zones are numbered out kind of in, you know, 1 through 5 is in order of priority from our perception right now until we start to hear more or to contribute what we see. But we see the first priority to be the residential island zone, and that's north of Waite, like that dense housing block. And then, you know, we call it an island because there really is kind of a split between this housing area Waite's right in the middle, and then you have the Main and Star district. We see Main Street as kind of being that second priority, or almost equal with the residential area. Being able to make this icon and anchor area with Waite and Sacred Heart and Garfield, this connector area is kind of number 3. Number 4, you have the riverfront and the metro parks and the new development. And in the back corner, we're trying to look at how do you give a stronger identity to Ravine Park, because that is what makes Garfield so unique, is the way that it's surrounded by its parks. And so just the key points for each of these zones, for that residential zone, obviously it just needs, we call it an island because we feel like it gets cut off almost. It gets cut off by that divide from the business district. It gets cut off by Front Street being such a barrier. There's this Ravine Park, but it's lost so much of its programming. And so it's just making stronger connections to those, really. And looking for gateways and strong intersections. And so one circled here would be that at Mott and Broadway as you enter into the Waite campus. Looking at pedestrian crossings on front, how to improve that Front Street edge, and just how to again make that connector through Zone 3 just more welcoming. When we talk about Zone 2, the Main Street zone.
Molly, do you want comments after each zone, or wait till you finish with all 5?
My plan was to go through all 5, but if you
Okay.
would like comments from each, I can be talked into either.
Your call.
I think we should keep moving, just based on time.
Yeah.
So when we talk about Zone 2, or the Main Street zone, this includes not just Main Street, Main and Star, but it also includes the housing behind it. I think you have to recognize that, some of the things that might be falling apart on Main Street are affecting this housing down here as well. And so they're connected, and people see themselves as a part of that Main Street district. From what we've heard, they might not feel, a part of that same residential core that we just talked about. And so some priorities, would be, these 2 key nodes at Main and Front, and then also at the intersection of Star and Broadway, because Broadway is also a pretty prominent street with all of its anchors. And we know that, Main Street is also kind of a focus. Like, there's a lot of city initiatives, and I know like LISC has some initiatives to help with the businesses along there. So how do we coordinate that with this document and have a business recruiting effort for neighborhood services that are needed? And how do we, propose, better streetscapes? Looking at this anchor zone, we have highlighted Sacred Heart, Waite, the stadium, Garfield, the Prep Academy. How does this area just be celebrated, really? And how does, this intersection right here, how does that become a key intersection to connect people, if they're leaving the parks out here into the main area? Or how does, how do people pass through the Waite campus into the Main Street Business District? Zone 4, of course, is the riverfront with a lot of new development that's moving along pretty strong. And so like key things that we see here, is making sure that, we continue to link that residential zone to the Metro Park and having better pedestrian crossings, which I know we've talked about, that renovations on Front Street are underway. Also, I know Connecting the Pieces talked a lot about neighborhood wayfinding, and so maybe that's a way to, connect pieces of the neighborhood. People know where to access the different parks, and like there's kind of that sense of ownership of that area. How do we link the residents of Burrito Lofts to Main Street? And that starts really at this intersection of Main and Front. I included this rendering of, this was like an early proposed development of something that could have happened on the corner across from the Weber building, like what happens here that draws people down Main Street and to start to invest in Garfield and seeing themselves as a part of Garfield and not just an extension of, both an extension of downtown and a part of the Garfield neighborhood.
Yeah, Molly, not to interrupt, but that proposal is the proposal for that corner. That's been approved by the Planning Commission.
Great. I don't know why I thought that something else happened, but no, that's good.
I'm not sure this is the,
Of course, I think there's some uncertainty whether the development is really moving forward. I think that's.
I'm not sure about that. I think it's moving.
Okay, good.
And then, last but not least is, figuring out how to, create a stronger identity for Ravine Park. And also to consider, the residential area kind of by Ravine Park that is almost separated really from this Zone 1. It's a different typology and might be seen as isolated or might be seen as its own, tighter community. But, things to think about is, how do we make the edges to Ravine Park walkable? Any pathways that might happen in that area, making sure that's accessible to residents, and is something that maybe, ends up complementing the Glass City Metro Park and becomes like a really great experience for people to tour the whole neighborhood through, the parks that surround Garfield. And we also included, studying Graham Street, and that's this street here, just because it is kind of an anomaly in the neighborhood, and making sure that they don't feel lost or isolated if they might need a defined edge from the park. But that's kind of what we have so far. And it's loose. It's meant for people to comment on, to build on.
Any initial reactions?
I've got a couple that I noted. One is it's East Broadway, not just Broadway.
Right. Right.
Good point.
We should have an E period, then Broadway on all our drawings. And the other one was the. This is actually for Anthony. We can address it later, but all the buildings on the south side of Main Street back in the 1800s were actually moved back. I believe it was like 18 feet to widen Main Street. And there's some wonderful history on that, how they moved those buildings back. They put new foundations in, lifted the buildings, put new foundations in, and then pushed the buildings back. It's a great tale, but I think should be included in the plan as part of the history of it.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Bob. Actually, we did a Did You Know post early on the Garfield Guides Instagram about the widening. And I think we included some of that information and some pictures as well.
And that will be in the plan. That's what we have that captured.
Yeah. This is great. After many months of the engagement and data collection, it's great to see this visual with some real substance in terms of the framework for the future plan. And again, this is the big picture. And we'd really like to get some feedback before we put some more details into the plan so we have the framework right. So we'd really welcome any comments or thoughts anybody has.
Just one more comment that I had on Molly's drawing. I thought it was pretty obvious that the intersection of Ravine and East Broadway might be considered for a roundabout, which would really be a great connection for those two streets. Just put that in the future thinking.
Okay. Anybody else other than Bob? Come on, guys. There's a lot there.
So no, I'm a little bit newer to this. This is my first time being involved in this in the first place. I don't know. It seems like you guys have a significant amount of time invested with all of these visuals that have been going on so far. Is there more actions? Is this just the vision? You're trying to see the demographics and trying to put a vision together of what you're doing here, or are there actually plans? And so I apologize since this is my first time being in this meeting. I'm sure I'm trying to play catch up here, but is this just a initial step to start putting the vision together to accomplish these zones, to do these community involvement, or is there actually events and et cetera scheduled that you guys have going on?
But good question. Molly or Liz, do you want to take that?
So I'll say that it was, it's a good question, by the way. So this got us to, I'm getting you, Molly. So this got us to the kind of, this framework is really the beginning stages. So even though we're halfway through our planning phase of this Garfield community plan, we're really viewing that this framework, or this skeleton, as Marty referenced, is really the bones of the plans. And then once we start really getting to what the goal of the plan is capacity building, and once we start getting more resident feedback, you know, they can start inputting directly into these different zones on what they want to see, and then we'll have some real action items and action steps tied to some of those goals and visions that the residents and the community really wants to see for those areas, if that makes sense.
No, that's perfect. So the reason why I didn't want to jump the gun if I was getting ahead of this meeting here. So just to speak a little bit, Bill Farnzell with, I'm butchering his last name there, with NeighborWorks had extended this invitation. Lathrop Company and NeighborWorks have partnered together to try and do a service project in these Garfield neighborhoods. So specifically, our zone or work basically falls in that #1 area category. Back in February of last year, we canvassed the Garfield neighborhood within a close proximity. I didn't realize how extensive until this meeting, how extensive Garfield actually was. We just labeled it the Garfield Neighborhood Project. But we canvassed between Essex down to Dearborn, from Front Street to homes past Mott, pretty much almost encompassing what you have there in your Zone 1. And we were providing this blanket option of about 12 to 14 different things that we were wanting to see if homeowners were interested in being involved in. And that ranged from replacing storm doors to redoing landscaping to painting homes, etc. And out of that, we got about, some people have moved because COVID kind of threw a kink in everything from last year, but basically we got about 13 or 14 residents that have replied with options. So now, right now, our project wise is currently in the stage of reaching out to our trade partners to get involvement, be donation financially, donation manpower. In addition, the Lathrop Company will be providing service hours to come to this neighborhood and try to accomplish these tasks. We're very early on in our stages as well, because we still have not received any confirmations yet. We just recently reached out to our trade partners to be able to see what donations they're willing to do. So currently our progress right now is meeting with the homeowners, trying to get some estimates as far as what actually is needed and get some more pictures so we have a firmer scope. But I guess I just wanted to share that with you guys. I don't know if that kind of accelerates things or throws a kink and stuff, but just kind of wanted to share with you guys what we've got going on our end. So
I think it's very timely. It certainly does not throw a kink or anything. That's great to hear.
Yes.
I think it's very supportive of what this plan is suggesting, even in this preliminary stage. So thank you.
Yeah, and I would add too that I think it would be great, Isaiah, if you know, as we start to reach out and try to build the capacity of this neighborhood, anything that you can share with those owners that you've like contacted and will be doing projects with, feel free to share any of the Garfield information, because I think multiple touch points are always good, and we can do the same as we continue to share it. And I think it's going to be great to share information that Lathrop and NeighborWorks is doing within the neighborhood as well.
Okay. Yeah, if I could just, I guess, since I haven't been privy to any of this information prior, Liz or Molly, I guess I could hang around after the end of this to try exchanging information. Would be happy to kind of keep you guys in the loop of what we're doing and kind of dates and expectations. So.
Perfect.
Isaiah, I have a question.
Yeah.
How did you go about doing the surveys and picking what residents you guys surveyed? I mean, how did you come about that in the Garfield area? Because I never heard about any of that.
So I wish I could speak to the fineness of this because let me give you a little background first. Lathrop, as a company, we do new hires. We try to do a service project with new hires. They put together a team and we work on doing outreach communities to try coming up with different projects. Lathrop was celebrating our 125th year anniversary last year. So my upper management reached out to several different organizations in the attempt to see what we could do in the Toledo area to stir up a lot of involvement from the community on an improvement to the city of Toledo. And through that process, we met with NeighborWorks, and NeighborWorks presented us this area. And with it being in close proximity to the metro parks, we felt that it would be perfect not only for the investment that was happening in the area to encourage the homeowners, but also it allowed us a little bit more flexibility of, staging if we have a crew size of manpower that exceeds a certain amount of, you're showing the parking, for instance, was kind of limited along these streets. We had some accessibility to the metro parks because it is our project to manage. So the culmination of what the vision was, what we were getting from community service programs, it kind of all culminated into surveying this neighborhood project. So we ended up with NeighborWorks. We put together a flyer and gave a little vision of what it is that we were looking to do. And we're just trying to basically encourage the homeowners to really take advantage of something that we're looking to try and doing and beautifying the neighborhood in one fell swoop. So we went door to door with these applications and dropped them off last February, I believe. And the goal was to do it last year, but again, COVID has really thrown a kink in everything. So we finally got the green light. We know that COVID is starting to look like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So our intention for this project is going to be, our goal is late August, around that time now. Hopefully we'll be through the woods of COVID, but also timeline wise, that's how it all kind of culminated.
I was just curious because I live in the Garfield area and I never got a flyer or anything like that. So I was just curious.
Correct. So like I said, I was unaware that Garfield was this large. We labeled it the Garfield neighborhood because it landed in there. There's a map that we have, and it's pretty much close to the approximate size of that number one that is being shared on Molly's screen right now. Okay. But because we weren't sure how big this could grow. So we are still open. I can pass on the flyer to you as well if you would like to reach out to more people in your neighborhood. Holly Lewis is one of the residents in that neighborhood that I think she goes by Holly Farrell now. I apologize. But she asked me for these blanket forms to see if she can get more people involved as well. So we're wanting to let this snowball as much and grow as much as we want. But for the sake of time, trying to actually put a vision in place and execute, we kind of put some timelines and tried to keep the confines close enough for us to be able to manage with what we knew we had.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Anyone else have any thoughts, questions about the framework plan?
I noticed Nancy.
had it, yeah.
Nancy?
The way that it's chunked up totally makes sense. And that's a really good foundation. What I was curious about is when on your social media, what kind of hits you've been getting? Has there been any, what the level of downloads are, the activity on each of, whether it's Instagram or Facebook? to kind of tease out what is going to maybe be more effective as a tool. And then also, as far as visits to the Garfield Guides website, how many unique visits have happened versus repeated? And what is the traffic like as far as as far as search engines go? How many times have people plugged this in? In other words, looking at trying to get the word out and how effective that is in gathering all that data.
Is that being tracked? Anyone know?
So I can speak to the Garfield Guides Instagram. That Instagram we've just converted into a, it's like not a business profile, but it's a way, there's a way that you can see insights on how many followers and which accounts you're reaching. It looks like in the past week, we've made 122 impressions. So we don't even have 122 followers on that account, but it does show you weekly, like how many people you're reaching. And it helps when organizations and partners cross post and repost posts on Instagram to their stories. The Wix site also does have a way to track that. I just haven't looked at it, but it does have that. So I could. Okay.
Have any comments, come out that may, have struck you as going, oh, wow, that's a great idea that I, as a planner, wouldn't have thought of from these from the people who've been reaching out?
Not on the Garfield Guides account, not recently. The TDC Instagram account has had some comments on the posts, but none that I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay. I mean, it's still early days, and, as spring rolls out, these are things that we really kind of need to be vigilant about in order to, kind of pursue something that is a little more unique and tailored to the neighborhood as opposed to being a little more boilerplate.
Okay. As this framework plan is really going to set the stage for later crafting of the plan, we really want to welcome any other thoughts or comments on this before we move on.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great foundation.
Okay.
And I think too, to your point, Nancy, like I think, once we have that really good connection to the schools and like the students, that's where we're seeing that interest will be growing. And especially as Anthony said, as organizations share and repost these things, and to your point too, I mean, we started those pages right at the beginning of this, and it's sometimes a slow process, but I think it has picked up recently, if that makes sense. So like we have seen, especially since the Metro Parks event, more people have engaged with those. So I will say that has picked up, which is really exciting to see as well. But yes, we should be tracking all of that information.
I'm really glad to hear that you are fully appreciating the younger demographic. Coming from my background, in which baby boomers have been the deciding factor for a lot of planning, whether it's transportation or community development. And, this is morbid, but 10, 20 years from now, we're not going to be dealing with this. I can speak for myself. I'm in my 60s. So I'm glad to see that population of millennials and Gen Z are, that there's this active outreach to engage that group. This is who we should be planning for.
Mm-hmm. And I think to that point too, I mean, even when before we did the Metro Parks and we had the low attended workshops that we had when Bev's granddaughter was there, she made a comment to Bev, I know, about, it was really even just great for people to ask me my opinion on the neighborhood I live on. And so like, that's obviously what we want to continue, is we do care about their opinions and their visions, because we want them to
Right.
stick around in the neighborhood. So
This plan is for them.
Yeah, yeah. Good, good. Anyone else?
Yeah, Marty, forgive my unfamiliarity with other TDC plans, but, what is the development of strategies to move recommendations forward? What does that look like as this process continues to unfold?
Well, I think it's going to be more specific recommendations and specific actions building upon the framework. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, it's really pretty early to even talk about implementation and further development when we're in the planning stage right now.
I mean, in each of those 5 zones, we had 6 to 10 different statements that we'll be building upon with more specific actions, partners needed to carry out the actions, and some consideration of time span for implementation.
yeah, and I think the other piece too, Ellen, is in all of our plans, we try to incorporate a timeline for when development could happen. So we really try to build off of like short-term wins that will, like things like creative placemaking, things like Arts Commission does, into some of more of the long-term like rehabbing businesses along Main Street and storefront renovations. And this plan is a little bit different in the fact that there are developments currently like big developments currently happening while we're doing the plan as well. So getting those developers and organizations that are putting money in, like Metro Parks and LISC eventually, and Connect Toledo putting money into the Garfield neighborhood, we'll be able to kind of hopefully rally around what's existing, so that we're able to then build up those visions for what the residents want. And we're happy to provide examples too of the most recent plans that we've done include Vistula and the Monroe Auburn neighborhood, and we're welcome. Like I can share those with you to give you a better idea of what that kind of looks like from a tangible space. That makes sense. I don't know if that answered your question. Kind of, not really.
No, yeah, just I don't know. I just think, I obviously highlighted, traffic calming on Front Street. There's obviously conversations underway about that, but, to do some of those things will require, much more, considerations and potential, dollar, investments that need to be made. So putting together what that strategy looks like, and you highlighted, the Ravine Park Zone, and there is conversations about what a Garfield Greenway would look like, through that area. So I think, I guess I'm just wondering, if these kind of things get included in the plan, and if we're able to provide, potential, funding strategies and other, partnership strategies to bring these things together, it just makes the plan, even more action oriented.
Yes.
And so I was just kind of curious what that looked like, having not been part of these before.
I mean, I think, Alan, I think it's good you brought that up, because we don't want to create the illusion that this is the plan. And we clean up this maps and we're done. That's really a beginning. It's the beginning of the next stage, which is the plan, and this is setting the stage for the more specific actions and strategies and timelines and all of that. It's kind of more of an outline, and we want to make sure we get the outline right before we march on.
And yeah, like as Elizabeth said, the thing that makes this plan so different, I think, than other ones that TDC has done is just like so much active development. And so like this document really needs to like show people in the neighborhood, hey, this is what's all going around you right now, and then also for the people who are making those happen, it's like making sure that you guys are all working together in these different zones, like laying out. So like obviously we want to incorporate what's been talked about, if that helps.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we have 5 zones speaks to while a small neighborhood, in a dense neighborhood. It's a very diverse neighborhood in terms of land uses and conditions and situations. And, you know, not many neighborhoods have a run with parks, have new development at this scale, neighborhood business district, major iconic high school, and everything else. So,
And fortunately, a new Metro Park being developed.
yeah.
That's been the catalyst.
Anyone else? Liz and Molly, you had an item on the agenda for discussion on moving forward. Did you want
I think that was this.
to? Okay.
Just on people's thoughts. And
We
like,
appreciate everyone sticking with us. This is a longer meeting than usual. We wanted to just confirm our next core planning team meeting, tentatively set for April 22nd. Does that still work for everybody? Any concerns with that date? Jody, does that work for you?
Jody
Yes.
had to hop off, but
Oh,
What day was that again, Marty?
April 22nd. I'm seeing a couple of yeses and fines.
It's
in the
fine for
chat
me.
box. Lock it in, 5 o'clock.
Sounds good.
Do we need an hour and a half or an hour? Liz or Molly?